Hello, I'm Reggie Turner, and I'm here with Daniel Pop and Jim Miller. The Flipside starts right now. Welcome to the show. Are you ready to say Hagerstown, West Virginia? There have been recent talks, including with the state of West Virginia, about Western Maryland seceding from Maryland and becoming a part of West Virginia. Jim, what say you?
Well, I'm going to vote no, if only because of the license plates. This is just beyond belief to me. I got to think that this is going to be a chapter in a book on how to run the perfect election campaign. This is going to head up this section that's titled, One Thing You Should Never Do in an Election Year. I mean, number one, the way it was thrown on the public just with no, I mean, this is pretty serious stuff.
Yes.
And, you hear California talking about splitting into 3 states. You hear other crazy talk, but now we've taken that crazy talk and we've got elected officials actually investigating what the potential for it is. Yeah, I don't think this one is going to end well for some people. And I know they've all backed up the bus. They better hope that we have short memory spans that we are always accused of having.
It seems to me that there was really no coherent reason that they collectively came together to even suggest this. Daniel, how do you see it?
I'm with Jim. I'm voting no on that. And I think it's just very unlikely that this is going to happen, right? And even if there was a chance for it to happen, it's not going to be in our lifetime. That is my stance on it. I do not have anything against West Virginia, but I am a lifelong resident of my county, and me personally, and a lot of the people I've talked to on this issue, are not ready for something like that too. If you give consideration to some of the major things that would have to change in order to accomplish something like this, from transportation, business regulations, our funding for our educational systems, even gun rights, dare I say, are vastly different, and making all of those marry, I just don't see it happening.
Jim, in reading the first article, Delegate Weibel is the chairman of the Washington County delegation.
Yes.
So that means that he was leading things for our county.
Yes, he was.
I have not read a coherent reason as to why he was leading the delegation in this direction.
Yeah.
And I believe he also mentioned he didn't even know if he would support it in the end.
Right. If you're looking for an argument, you're not going to get one. And Danielle's examples are, I think, just the tip of the iceberg.
Agreed.
And the other net thing that's got to be, so here's the deal. Think about this in terms of business. This is an acquisition, right? West Virginia is the acquirer. Western Maryland is the acquiree. Well, Western Maryland, in total, is a net taker from the state of Maryland. We don't pay in near as much money as we get back in state governments and state governmental services. So what is the benefit to West Virginia to do that? Right? I mean, it doesn't make sense at any level.
But they sure do seem awfully excited about it, about that opportunity.
Well, I think Reggie's right on the money. I think it's a political thing.
Yeah.
This is to appease.
This is to appease a small portion of the party.
Right. But it's not the portion of the party that's going to be voting for you. I mean, regardless of where you live, you need some Democratic votes. Even if you're in Western Maryland, you need some Democratic votes to get elected, right? Especially if you're running for a Senate seat, Delegate McKay. This is not good.
No, my issue is that my concern is, how can this delegation be effective in Annapolis after a stunt like this that was not well thought out. And it was done with no conviction because everyone's running from what they've done at this point. When I first was hearing about this happen, last week I was at Leadership Maryland. We were on the campus of the University of Maryland, and just the poking and the ridicule that I'm hearing from 50 leaders around the state of looking at Western Maryland, I don't believe that's good for us.
Well, and here's the other problem. Say what you want, and I hear that, Western Maryland is largely forgotten, but that's frankly not true.
That's not true.
It's changed a lot.
If you look at Governor Hogan, leading back Governor Ehrlich certainly, and even our former state treasurer when he was in office. There's been a lot of attention paid to Western Maryland, as evidenced by the stadium we're going to build.
Right. So that brings a question in regards to Delegate Weibel. We have a $70 million infusement coming from the Maryland Stadium Authority for this stadium. Was there any consideration of, okay, let's say you want to move forward with this. Is the West Virginia Stadium Authority going to pick this up? Had that been a conversation? Had that been vetted?
No, I don't think any of it's been vetted.
And how does this affect the money that they're looking to go after this legislative session within the
that's
heart
exactly right.
of the city?
Yeah.
In regards to the ancillary projects that they would like to do to build around the stadium.
Because if you think that there are not people in Annapolis that hold a grudge, you're sorely mistaken. And I think this could hurt us in the long run as well, because they're going to point back to this little fiasco and say, no, you don't even want to be a part of this state. Why should you want to talk about being ignored? We just gave them the reason to ignore us.
Yeah. Danielle, tell me you're more optimistic.
I try to be. The only thing I really have to be optimistic about in this case is that you've been reading a lot of them, West Virginia calling it, let's just have an adult conversation here. We're not going to pillage your county kind of thing. Let's weigh out the pros and cons. Let's ask questions like about the stadium funding and educational and stuff. So that term adult conversation, it turned me off a little bit because, it's good that we're talking about it and maybe even raising more awareness for Western Maryland.
We shouldn't be talking about it in that context.
I agree.
In my view.
Yeah.
And Mike McKay, who I like a lot, said it's really not seceding from Maryland. Well, it's a prerequisite to seceding from Maryland, and it's a conversation that goes nowhere, and it's a waste of time.
But doesn't that contradict the letter? The letter said one thing, and then they're trying to say, well, no, it's not. It's not that.
Right. No, I understand that. There's a contradiction abound.
The other thing that I considered here is in regards to what are the after effects of this and kind of where this is going. I think of all the people that it hurts the most, in my opinion, would be Delegate Champ. When we look at Washington County, she is in the most purple part of our county. So her constituents don't look the same as they do around the rural parts of our county. She's not faced the voters yet. She's in the heart of the city where this infusement of dollars are going in regards to what she's represent. They're putting together their agenda in regards to their next ask. How do you do that? What's going to be the effects on her running to keep her seat? And does it make her vulnerable?
Yeah. I think it does. I think it makes her incredibly vulnerable. I mean, there's so many downsides to this. And again, there's just absolutely no reason that we did this.
Yeah. And then the one other thing that I saw there, and Danielle, if you saw this as well, I noticed in the article how Delegate Weibel threw Senator Quarterman under the bus.
Yes, he did.
He shared his text messages with the Herald Mail. in regards to saying that everybody was on board, everybody was supporting this. And then there was kind of this dance back and forth between the two. And I think for me, I would expect this type of behavior if it was party against party. But this is all individuals of the same
Right.
party that are supposed to come together to form an agenda to take to Annapolis. And I'm not sure how they're going to complete that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. And again, it's McKay, it's Wyville, it's Chaim, it's George Edwards. I mean, George has nothing to lose at this point.
He's on his way out the door.
He's out the door. Yeah, I think we look idiotic.
The only thing is, I know that Delegate Cham and Senator Quarterman both issued statements in regards to where their thoughts were. I think for me, I would have wanted Delegate Cham to explain why did she take the trip to West Virginia, because that wasn't explained there.
Why did any of them take the trip to West Virginia? Why did any of them write these letters? I mean, the letter, forget about how they're trying to spin it after the fact. The letter was pretty self-explanatory.
It was right to the point.
Yeah.
What's the next steps? We
Yeah.
think it'll be good for both of them.
Right. We, the undersigned state representatives, request that you consider adding us as constituent counties to the state of West Virginia. I don't see a whole lot of room for interpretation there.
How do you see it, Danielle?
I'm agreeing with you, and I think you had mentioned earlier, Jim, about other states have, tried to do this in the past.
Well,
and
California has been yelping for how many years that they're going to divide into 3 different states.
Right, and even West Virginia and Virginia used to be one state, I believe.
Yeah,
a
West
long
Virginia and
time
Virginia
ago,
used
but-
to be one state.
Yes, but I think I had also read something about, Western Maryland possibly becoming its own state. There's no headway in anything like that, but it was just a way to get you to think about, those political divides and creating new territories.
This is something that I would expect to come out of an uninformed constituent of one of these representatives who doesn't know the fact that we are a net taker, who doesn't know that taxes would go through the roof, who doesn't know that all of these programs, all of this funding is gonna, is all gonna fall on the local community if we do this. Not something I would expect from someone who theoretically at least knows the details, because here the devil is in the details.
So where do we go from here? That's the question, because now this delegation has to get itself together, mend some fences, and they have to have a coherent message to go to Annapolis with this session, along with campaigning because they're running for
Well,
office.
if you don't think you're going to see this letter reappear in a campaign ad over the next 12 months, it's going to be whoever is running against these incumbents are going to be using this to their advantage every day, and they're going to state the reasons that I stated, that you stated, and probably many more.
The other thing that I read, and Dan, you tell me if you agree with this, the way that I believe it was Senator Edwards tried to couch this was that this was an ultimate plea to our colleagues in Annapolis to recognize the fierce urgency of now with respect to supporting economic development and growth initiatives for our 3 counties.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because our 3 counties are known to receive what they call sympathetic funding, as you were saying earlier about the perception that our 3 counties are
Could live on their own.
yes, and almost lesser, if you will. So again, going back to universities, for example, and that sympathetic funding. I want to be a part of the rest of the state of Maryland, just like many of our residents here. We shouldn't be sympathized upon. We have a very strong area in the Panhandle of Maryland, and I would love to see it stay that way.
I agree. And, you know, the thing is that we have, obviously, Washington County circumstances very much different
Right.
from Allegheny and Garrett counties, right? We have this large infusement of dollars that are coming into the core, and it's important that it is leveraged properly to spur the economic development that we need within our community.
Yep.
But again, this legislative session, they're formulating their ask for the ancillary projects to surround that. And I think that all that's vulnerable now, because you saw some of the Democratic lawmakers from downstate that were saying, well, wait a minute, you're a net taker, and you're acting as if
You're paying all the bills.
you're paying all the bills.
Yeah.
So that makes it tough negotiating when, you know, I believe one of the legislators talked about the 3.4, 3.5 million that's going to be needed on a yearly basis in regards to for the stadium going forward. So that's a little curious to me and is really, really concerning. And I'm not sure if this issue may not spur more people to run against them.
Oh, I think it will. Yeah, this is not something
Good
you do in an
point.
election year, in my view.
I mean, this is what we would call unforced error,
Yeah, exactly.
right? In regards to that. And there's just so many layers of this in regards to kind of how it moves forward as well. And what's your best guesstimate? How do you think we get out of this?
Well, I have to admit, I was pleasantly reading the front page of the paper that said, this is a dead issue. It's like, okay, good, you know, get that message out that it really is a dead issue. It doesn't mean that all of those surrounding topics that we're discussing today aren't, you know, very relevant and important to have. But as it is today, it is a dead issue.
Yeah,
It's a dead issue, but it was never anything other than a dead issue.
That's a good point.
that's the point.
It was a political stunt, and I think that it's going to increase the field in terms of the elected officials or the candidates that are going to be running for these seats. I think that it is going to impact how others look at us and potentially fund our projects in the near term. And I think it really, you know, especially with the Republican governor in place, you know, if he does run for president, and I think there's a lot of people that think he may, can you imagine, why would we elect him to lead our country? He can't even, he even has part of his state that wants to secede.
Well, that's a great point. And right now, I do know that you have members of the delegation calling Hogan's office apologetic, trying to get back in good graces at this point.
Yeah, well, good luck with that one.
Because it's almost as if they're, you know, this is his constituency out here, right? He has spent a lot of time in Western Maryland, himself and the lieutenant governor. Dollars
He
have
had
been
meetings in our Maryland theater.
Yes, yes. Dollars have been flowing here, and then this is how he's treated.
This is how. Thanks a lot, Gov.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well, as we say with many topics, I'm sure there's going to be some things that we'll circle back around
Yep.
on this issue. Next up, to defund or not defund? That is no longer the question. More on that after the break.
All right, so now we talk.
All right.
Did you know that Wi-Fi connects multiple devices in your home? So go ahead. Surf, game, or simply watch your favorite shows and movies anywhere in the house on any device. With Wi-Fi, your house becomes a high-tech home.
Unleash the internet in your home with Antietam Ultra Wireless Home Network. With speeds up to 1 gig, your whole family can surf together faster. We make it easy with our hassle-free professional installation. Call Antietam Broadband today and add a Wi-Fi modem free for 60 days.
For more than 10 years, the University System of Maryland at Hagerstown has been providing a local higher education option for students in the Quad State region. With more than 20 undergraduate and graduate programs from 6 Maryland State universities, there are many opportunities to earn your degree while saving on the cost of commuting.
Financial benefits to attending the program have been significant.
USMH. Academic excellence, outstanding value.
Welcome back to the show. Governor Hogan drew a line in the sand around defund the police efforts, saying enough is enough. We can't defund the police. Danielle, what say you?
Well, a question that came to my mind when I was thinking about this is, first of all, is this actually going to improve anything about crime? And secondly, how else could that money be allocated for violence prevention or educational programs in order, should that money be going to that prevention then rather than changing anything about the funding for the police?
So you're advocating taking some of the funds and redirecting them to prevention and education and other elements. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, and I think I don't know if it's, again, if I'm 100% advocating it, but I am interested to see what the impact of that could be.
I mean, even if we take the conversation back last year when we had Deja Johnson on the show and she was talking about her position in regards to defund the police, the word defund has become a toxic word that one political side has used to kind of shut down all conversation.
Well, and if politics is partially about marketing, this is like calling Colonel Sanders' restaurants warm dead chicken. I mean, seriously, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Republicans have won the marketing war on defund the police.
They have.
There's
no way they can't, because
Right.
it's an idiotic idea.
Right.
Now, is it an idiotic idea to say, what is the root cause of some of these issues, and can we address that through mental health services, through education? Can we increase the funding for body cams to keep, locks keep honest people honest, right? I feel the same way about body cams and those types of things. Of course, we've already seen where the body cams are in place and we look at the same footage and we see two different things, but that's another story.
But defund, that is what it has meant. It has not meant, other than the radical view of a minority, right, to basically take funds away from police
To
departments.
get rid of the complete, yeah.
Right, and to get rid of them. That's a radical view of a few small voices.
And by the way, they're the same people that when they're on the other end of an angry mob that doesn't want to do that, guess who they call?
Right, right. But in regards to Maryland and the Maryland legislature, the defund in regards to how Governor Hogan was presenting it here was not the intent, has not been the intent in regards to any legislation. But I mean, let's look at this for what it was. He was speaking in a conference to the Maryland Chiefs of the Police Association and the Maryland Sheriff's Association. So this was playing politics because he was speaking to a core group of his, right? In regards to this, it doesn't further the conversation. It doesn't, extend the debate how we can improve law enforcement, how we can have police officers stay and not leave. And in areas like ours, how can we get the compensation to where it needs to be to have, the officers that we need to keep our community safe? I don't think this did anything to help the conversation or debate. I just think that, and I don't believe this speech was meant for that purpose.
No, but I also don't think the whole concept of defund the police was ever meant to attract people to it as a real opportunity to make changes in our law enforcement agencies that would have a positive effect on the way they carried out their duties. I don't have any statistics, but I do know this. There are a ton, and I actually read some statistics, but I'm not going to be able to repeat them. There are a ton of contacts between police and civilians over the course of a year. And if you look at a percentage of those that are really what you would call questionable, it's minuscule.
Right.
It is absolutely minuscule. That doesn't suggest that it shouldn't be zero, because it should. Okay, there's no, in my version of America, there's no room for someone to be harmed by the police for not, in a way that should not have happened. But the statistics don't support the argument, in my view.
My concern is that when politicians do this on either side of the aisle, it reduces the conversation.
It does.
And it doesn't allow
It
us
alienates.
to get, it alienates, and it doesn't allow us to get to solutions that can help our communities. Danielle, what say you on that?
Well, Reggie, did you happen to read, maybe it was in that same speech that you were talking about the term refunding?
Yes.
And how that was taken out of context. How do you feel about that term, as I suppose it's supposed to be a positive way of looking at it?
I think that, well, if you're saying refund the police, then you are basically claiming that something has been taken from it. I look at all these things as triggers. I mean, it's kind of like Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. Defund the police, now refund the police. These are slogans that kind of fire up, radical elements of each base. But again, I think it squelches real conversation in regards to how do we keep our community safe? How do we reduce the fact that minorities, especially African Americans, are assaulted at higher levels than others, by those that are here to protect and serve? And how do we bridge the gap in communities? Because as we brown as a country, we're going to be dealing with more people that may not have the same beliefs, culture, and things as us. How do we meld that all together? And I just think that, again, if Governor Hogan is looking to run, for the next office, this is kind of tiptoeing back towards the base and giving them some red meat.
Yeah, it probably is. But again, I think the defund effort is tiptoeing the other way.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, this is all political, and that's part of the problem. You need to take the politics out of law enforcement. It has no business there.
And I'll give you a great example of a conversation. So, recently in one of my Leadership Maryland, one of our retreats, we had the mayor, I believe, of Ocean City. And he was talking about some efforts in regards to his police force, where there were 4 officers that there were some corrupt things that had happened, there was some wrongdoing. And how it was kind of presented was, we caught these officers, they did this thing. And one of my classmates is a former police officer. And, his challenge to him is that you're talking about 4 officers, within a department of, I believe it was 1,000. He was like, why aren't you highlighting the good in that? That it was such a small percentage, and that the police department found these things on their own. If we're always leaning the conversation towards negative, then you're adversely affecting the men and women that are doing the right thing every day and making their jobs tougher for them. And that was a perspective that I really appreciated hearing from him in regards to how are we having these conversations to have vigorous debate, but getting to solutions as opposed to satisfying the needs of the fringes of our parties.
Yeah. The other thing that strikes me is we've talked often on this show about root cause. And what is the root cause for some of the increased violence? What is the root cause? Does it have to do with with some of the drug issues that have resurfaced over the last several years? Is by putting law enforcement in schools, does that assume that we all think that something bad's going to happen and we need them there? There were never law enforcement officers in schools when I grew up. You know, what is, and I know this is a Republican thing to say, and I'm gonna state that up front, but you know, the family, the nucleus of the family, how does the way that has changed impact what we're seeing? You know, this young man that was charged with murder in Hagerstown here just a day or so ago. I mean, this kid was what?
17 years old.
17. And I know he's innocent until proven guilty, but if he's guilty, he's done. Cancel Christmas.
Well, that's a situation where there would be more than one life lost, because obviously who he murdered in his life, those are two lives.
And we
there
also,
that are
you know,
lost.
the pendulum has swung, and I think there's some issue here. I mean, we started, and I get the Mothers Against Drug Driving, I get the Mothers Against Drugs or whatever, and I get all of that, and I support that 100%. I don't want my kids on drugs. I don't want anybody on drugs. But, you know, when you put somebody in jail for what, I don't know what they call it now, but what used to be called a nickel bag of pot, which is what we were doing at some point, you know, that changes their life. That lives on their record. It's reportable to potential employers. And I got to tell you, as a young man, not with the drug thing, but certainly with alcohol, I could have gotten in a lot of trouble at some points. And only through God's grace did I not. Yeah, I don't know that we need to, I think sometimes the pendulum swings too far in that regard. And that is something that I think we need to continue to look at.
I think when we shrink it down to our community, because it's hard to look at things around the state when every jurisdiction has different issues. But if we look at our community, and for anyone that has watched this show over the past year, they have heard me say this many times. We have a 27% poverty rate in the city of Hagerstown. We can have all these programs to address symptoms, but until we get to the root, which is poverty,
Right.
a poverty mindset, I don't believe that we're going to really solve any of these issues. I know that our mayor recently put up a statement, and she was speaking about public safety. The majority of these crimes are known. The victims are known. They know each other. This is not a public safety issue where people are just being murdered and carjacked in our community. These are people that know each other. And at the root of all of this is poverty.
Right.
Public safety is just one facet of it. And I think that if anything that our local politicians and our state politicians are going to do, we really need to have some serious conversations about poverty and what we can do, not to keep people in poverty and keep putting dollars in their pocket for them to flow it back into the economy and make others wealthy, but what do we do to get people out of poverty and change these generational things that have been happening in our community for a long time?
I couldn't agree more. And here's the other part of that statistic. The majority of those 27% that are in poverty are children.
Yes.
They are children.
Half of the children
that
in the
have-
city of Hagerstown are live in poverty.
that have no say, no opportunity to change that. They are just learning a lifestyle that then they will feel it's okay to repeat. I'm not saying they want to repeat it, but there's going to be a portion of them that will allow themselves to get to that level rather than, you know, pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And that is, you're absolutely right in my view. That's where we need to get into the root cause, because isn't it an unwritten rule that we should give our children better than we've had ourselves?
Absolutely.
And I think that's an important piece.
Yeah. Danielle, jump in here. How do you see things relative to our community?
Well, I like what you said about the family nucleus and about identifying the root cause. And the statistic of poverty is, you could almost estimate it just by walking around. You know, we live in a unique county where we have some of the more wealthiest family households, and then others that are not that way. And it really makes sense what you said about poverty impacting the crime and the people, rather than the public safety issue, that do know each other. It's so true. And to touch on what you were saying about schools, I have a son who's in high school, and I worry about these types of things all the time, of him hopefully not getting in trouble just like you didn't, Jim. But I also feel that just having the police presence there at schools has helped with deterring some of the crime that's going on.
But even that, I mean, again, did you have that kind of trouble did you have crime in the school to the level we see it now in our
Not to this level.
Right, and that's my point. There's a reason for that.
But
putting the policeman in the lobby of the school is addressing the symptom, not the problem.
Right. But when I was in school, when you were in school, there were not mass shootings either.
No, there weren't.
Right. So we are in a different time.
But there again, we're addressing the symptom.
Right.
Why
well,
are there
I
mass
think
shootings?
there needs to be both, right?
And and all due respect, and I don't know where the two of you sit on this, but just taking people's guns away is not going to fix that problem.
No.
Because they will find people that want to be violent are going to find ways to be violent.
Right.
Look at the Boston Marathon, or Boston Marathon, was that what it was?
Right.
With the pressure cooker. People will find ways to make or get weapons.
Well, in the society that we live in today, with all the risk factors out there, yes, we do need to solve the underlying issues, but I'm comforted with some type of presence in schools right now with having children that are school aged.
And I am too.
It's disappointing that it has to be that way.
I drive my daughter to school and I see the little car sitting out front and I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
So,
Danielle, you get the last word on this one.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of how important the issue is with the root cause in poverty and family, and also, programs that may be needed for, after school, or how to get resources for the help that you need. And I could go on and on and on that. But just thank you all for that good, enlightening conversation.
let's figure out how to fix this, Reggie.
Yeah.
I got a few ideas. Been working on a few, if you haven't noticed, but we'll continue to. And I'm sure when Terrence is back, he will enlighten us as
I'm
well
sure he
from
will.
a different perspective.
Half of what he says will be wrong. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding, Terrence.
All right, we'll leave that there. Up next, 3 panelists, 5 topics, 10 minutes. Stay with us for Fast 5.
The University System of Maryland at Hagerstown provides a convenient location for students to earn a bachelor's, master's, or even doctoral degree. Located in downtown Hagerstown, USMH offers more than 20 degrees from 7 Maryland state universities. Classes are taught by the same professors you would find at your home institution, and your degree comes from that university too. Regional tuition rates are available for select counties in Pennsylvania, Virginia, and West Virginia. There is even student housing within walking distance of the campus. Simply apply for transfer admission at the university that offers your program. Scholarships are available both from USMH and individual universities. With flexible scheduling, small class sizes, and state-of-the-art facilities, there's no better time to complete your degree. Apply today. University System of Maryland at Hagerstown. Academic excellence, outstanding value.
Welcome to Fast 5. First up, 2 students asked for more voting rights on the Washington County Board of Education. Danielle, what say you?
So let's dissect this one a little bit. The 2 students as on the board, it's always been known as a ceremonial position,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they don't have official voting rights. I think the proposal that they're coming out is to have at least some voting rights that would make sense for them, and the influence that they bring to the table. The other thing I wanted to bring up is, because they are students, juniors and seniors in high school, right? They may not be 18 years old and even have the ability to vote yet. Just as, something to bear in mind with their ages. And I know we're talking about the, Board of Ed, but to make major decisions like that. So I don't know, how do you guys feel about that being just a ceremonial position?
Yeah, so ceremonial is exactly what it's been termed. I think you bring an interesting point about the age piece, because there may be some legal reason, although it looks like other counties in Maryland are doing it.
Yes.
So do they just pick people that are 18? And if so, how does that limit the field? Because, for example, I turned 18 March of my senior year. Well, guess what? I was one of the people that was, one of the ceremonial positions on the board. That wouldn't have worked so well, right? So that's an interesting point that I think would need to be referred. I guess from my perspective, if you sit on a board, we've all sat on boards where you are what is termed an ex officio member, meaning that you have full voice but no vote. I think from my perspective, the voice is the most important piece of this. Tell me what you're thinking. Be an active part of the solution, be an active part of the discussion, more so than just the vote.
Part of this says to me is that the students are feeling that their voice is not being heard. That's why they want a vote. And there are many students that are 18, so if the voting members have to be limited to students that are 18, I don't think that's going to be hard to find, within the school system. I take issue with a lot of the ceremonial things that we do, not just in our community, but around the country, because I don't know if they serve the greater good. And I'll give you another example. About 3 years ago, the county commissioner started a diversity committee. Here we are. We've been through the throes of COVID. We had social unrest with George and Floyd. We had marching in our streets and all of these things. And that committee has accomplished nothing of record. It was something ceremonially done. I believe Commissioner Wayne Kiefer was kind of the head of that. And it has not produced a thing. So there was something put in place ceremonially, but it did not execute and do anything good for our community. And I believe that, in a time as that we're in now with COVID and all these issues and the issues that are affecting, our children, I would have no issue with, some of the senior members having at least some voting rights on, even if it's in a limited capacity, so they can increase the say. Because I believe what that will do is that we're going to have a more engaged citizen that is going to be ready to participate in the process once they leave high school. Because remember, we're counting on this generation to move us forward, right? This is the generation that's going to need to be productive. They're going to need to be productive in society to still fund Social Security so that we can get it. So I want them participatory. I don't want to push them away.
No. I would suggest also that I think one of the other things that we have not done to the extent that we should is really advertise and market the fact that these positions even exist.
Yes.
How many students in our school system know that there are 2 ceremonial or otherwise positions at the Board of Education that are filled by students? I got to tell you, when I was in school, until they asked me to be one of them, I had no idea. None.
And it's quite a rigorous process to even be considered. Some of the criteria, you even have to videotape yourself.
Yeah. It wasn't so rigorous when I was there.
Right. So they're taking it seriously.
Maybe your experience changed things. They had to step up the rigor.
Yeah. They said, "Can he breathe?" Yes. Okay, put him on.
So Danielle, with that being said, with this rigorous process, I mean, would you be comfortable with the students having more responsibility with all the, with their workload, trying to figure out what they're going to do with the next stage of their life, and they're giving their time and efforts to this? Having some type of voting ability would give them more of a voice.
Yes, I absolutely am a proponent of it. And it really warms my heart, makes me happy to see how serious they are taking it. And just by it being a topic of discussion for us, it is giving them voice. And I'd love to see that progress.
One of the pictures that was of one of the students, and I think he was actually a former student at this point, who's leading this effort. I don't know where I've run into him, but I've run into him several times. Very articulate young man.
Yes, he's going places.
He is without question going places. I mean, he's got it going on for sure. So I think it's worth looking at.
Yeah.
That's my final word.
Well, hopefully we'll see an article that this gets some traction and movement soon.
But again, I think the other thing is we need to increase the visibility of those positions. I think these students that are
Yes.
representing need to report back to the students about what's going on at their Board of Education.
And I'm not sure if that's not already happening. You know, my daughter is just back in public school. I have not had an opportunity to ask her, does she know or hear about these? But that's something I'm going to check with her on as well. Next topic, group gathers to celebrate progress in clearing historic black cemetery near Keedysville. I'll take the lead on this one. I am very familiar with this particular project. I have worked with Ron Lytle, that's the chair of the African American Historical Association of Western Maryland, which is a mouthful. Ron has been very passionate for many years in regards to preserving African American history, and he has been doing a lot of work behind the scenes without a great deal of resources, without a large support system. This is something that's important to our community. And the other thing is, this is not the only cemetery within our community that has been lost or forgotten. There is one at Hathaway that is on Elizabeth Paul's property that she has been working on. And matter of fact, her and a group have a cleanup effort coming this weekend, and they have a ceremony coming up. And it's all tied to the historic Johnson Street community because many of the folks that are buried in these places live there. So many of the people that were buried at Bethel AME Church off of Bethel Street,
Right.
once that cemetery was filled, they had to find other places to bury folks from the community. So like the Moxley brothers are buried at one site and many of them at others. So this is just an extension. And I do know that on a state level, Speaker Jones does have an affinity towards preserving and doing things in regards to these forgotten cemeteries, many of them that have been built over, like the one at Halfway. Bethel Gardens was built over top of portions of the cemetery in the Johnson Street community. So many of these forgotten places have not been honored.
And I read too that they would be happy to even just get a count of
Yes.
how many people were buried there for historical purposes, and that it wasn't just slaves. These were, residents of our
Right.
area.
Free people working in the area.
Exactly.
Yes. And many were buried well after, slavery, up until I believe the 1950s or so that were buried there. I'm excited in regards to this work. I think there's more to be done in kind of tying it together in regards to the historical items in our community. But from a human decency standpoint, how we treat our dead, I think, is important as well. And the things that we can do to right some of the wrongs that we've done within our communities in regards to these burial places. One of the other things that I've learned over time is that African Americans lived all over Washington County. So I know that in Clear Spring, also in Hancock, there are other cemeteries out there that have been kind of left behind.
Right.
So hopefully this will spearhead other work. I know that there's grant funding and things for this type of work, and this is being done all over the country. I'm just glad it's happening in our community.
Yes.
Topic number 3. The Georgian Historic Apartment Building on Potomac Street sells for $1.8 million. Where do you think that's leading us, Jim? Is that speaking to more economic development?
Well,
in the
that's
core?
exactly my question. You know, I think that people are, and I know if you look at Facebook, there is nothing good to say about Hagerstown. That's simply not true.
Yes.
It is simply not true. Is there crime in Hagerstown? Yes, there is.
Yes.
Is there crime in every town the size of Hagerstown? Yes, there is. Are the majority of people scared to go out at night? I don't think they are.
No.
I'm not.
No.
So
Not in the core of the city.
right. So I think this is great news. I think it is an indication, a leading economic indicator. How's that one? Of things to come, and the fact that some of these major projects that people like Don Bowman, the Maryland Theater, other investors who have put their money where their mouth is to help reinvigorate our community, I think we're going to see more people starting to buy buildings and rehab buildings. I mean, there's amazing architecture in Hagerstown.
Yeah.
And some of these buildings just need a little TLC. Some of them need completely gutted and start over, but that's another story.
I think that this may be a trend of kind of reimagining what Hagerstown is going to look like in the future, and a $70 million investment from the state helps that along, because in many cases private investors may not want to come in until they see that there's
Right.
going to be state investment along with what they're looking to accomplish. So I'm excited about it. What say you?
I hope that it's a good, positive economic change, but for Hagerstown, anything new that happens or any of that investment money that comes in is such a cool, at least, evolution.
Yes.
And I like what you said about reimagining Hagerstown. That's a great term for it. It generates excitement, it generates foot traffic and more interest, and I hope that this works out well.
Well, they've got a cool little restaurant on the first floor called the Dog House.
I haven't
Yes.
been.
Which, if you've not been there, I highly recommend it. And
I was
people
at the
say-
doghouse today.
People say hot dogs. What's so special? They're good hot dogs. That's all I can say.
They're excellent hot dogs. Shout out to Jake. And also, the beef coney dog is my favorite there.
Ooh,
Absolutely love it. I've been there twice this week. That's not really on my plan, so I'm gonna have to make some modifications. But it's a who's who in there. Today there were lawyers and politicians and everyone in there. So it's a place where you're gonna stop and you're gonna have a great conversation on your way out the door as well.
Dare I say everybody knows your name?
Not everybody knows my name, but I knew a lot of people in there.
I was
so-
actually referring back to the Cheers.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Absolutely. Next topic. A group of nearly 50 nonprofits have launched a campaign to effectively end Facebook current business model in the wake of the whistleblower testimony. Danielle, what say you?
Can you guys talk to me intelligently about these algorithms and how do they know? How do they get our personal data?
Because you give it to them.
Now, see, I'm glad you said that. You said
And
exactly
by the
what I
way,
was thinking.
I saw one
so-
today. That was, because it used to be, and just as an example, it used to be, give me your list of 20 questions.
Yeah, they steal all your
foods that
information.
you like and don't like. Have you ever broken your arm? Have you ever traveled abroad? Have you ever done this? Have you ever done that? They crawl that stuff and they get information. Well, now they figured that, well, you don't want to give me your information, so we'll ask about your mom. There was one out there today that said, hey, talk to me about your relationship. Have you ever done this with her? Have you ever done that with her? Has she ever done this? Wow.
Right. But Danielle, have you never had the experience where you were maybe looking for something on Amazon or something, and then all of a sudden you go to your Facebook feed, and then all of a sudden there's an ad for what you were looking for?
All the time. It's extremely creepy.
Yeah.
Or even if you're thinking about going on a trip and you go to Travelocity or something, then all of a sudden you start seeing all these ads on your Facebook for other places that they recommend for you to stay. And I believe I read once about the algorithm is if you go long enough without showing interest on those ads that you can click on, it will eventually die down a little bit, but it's all based on what you're most recently interested in.
And you talk about Big Brother, and I can't prove this, but I was on a phone call on my cell phone, and I was talking to someone about a medical procedure that they were planning, an elective medical procedure. Now, I am not doing data at all. I'm doing traditional, plain old voice communications. And I turn on my Roku, and I get into YouTube, and guess what the ad was on YouTube? That is kind of creepy. So either my TV microphone is monitoring me, and they're filtering based of that, which is again another thing that's creepy.
Or
we want all the.
too.
Well, I don't use Alexa. I refuse to have Alexa in my house. But we all want this voice control of everything, right? But we don't understand what that opens us up for, because they can monitor. And there was, I think it was Samsung that, and don't quote me on that. I don't want to say this. I don't want to get sued. But one of the TV manufacturers talked about the fact that, if only for a little bit, they actually record everything that comes in from this. Think about that.
Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah.
And because of your internet connection, they can tell exactly where you are.
How about the outages with Facebook that happened recently, where it was down for 5 or 6 hours?
Yeah.
Well, I think part of that is that some businesses that depend on Facebook for marketing and business, they have to kind of reevaluate, because that costs those company dollars.
But don't you think it was funny that the outage happened right after the whistleblower came out? I think
it was very
much the
that
next
was
day.
that was a bit odd.
Very coincidental.
That was very odd and coincidental that happened.
Because when's the last time that happened?
I don't
a year
recall,
ago, maybe. I can't.
I don't
remember.
I just know
remember.
everyone was
Not
panicking
for 5
about
hours.
it for 5
Yeah.
Not for 5 hours.
But here's the thing. This is one thing that politicians can agree on, making Facebook the villain.
Yeah.
So we know that some type of change is going to come. Is it going to be change that's productive for society? Time will tell.
Yeah.
However, this is probably one of the only issues that they can agree on, that Facebook's the villain.
And if they have their hand on it, it probably won't be productive for society, but
No.
that's another story.
Yeah. All right, our last topic. A crypto trading hamster performs better than Warren Buffett in the S&P 500. Jim, you love to talk markets.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to talk markets. So Mr. Gox, I think is his name, Goxx, is this hamster, and they've got this little, A/B kind of thing to where he picks a stock or stocks, and apparently he's outperforming the S&P 500. Yeah, obviously, this is a perfect example of post hoc ergo propter hoc, following it therefore because of it, which is not usually true, and it's certainly not true in this case. But you know what? It's funny.
Yes.
And I am going to go buy a hamster here tomorrow.
Hopefully not to pick your investments.
Yep.
It's very gimmicky. I watched Mr. Gox, is it?
Yep.
On YouTube, and it's so cute.
You
What a
remember
cute little guy.
you remember the chicken at the mall that used to play tic-tac-toe?
Oh.
They had
I-
a chicken in a
remember
glass
that.
cage at like Time Out or one of them, and the chicken would play tic-tac-toe.
Well, we used to do something with the JCs where you could bet on a square in a cow pasture.
Yeah, and see, yeah, exactly. The cow patty. Yeah. All right.
Those are some things that I have not participated in, so I guess I'm missing out.
You're missing out on life, Reggie.
I'm a traditionalist. Warren Buffett has made generational wealth for more people than we could possibly do. This is cute, but hopefully people aren't taking advice from this hamster.
Well, that's the same people that don't want to shop, but they'll take horse pills. Sorry.
Before we get off topic, but we'll leave it there for tonight. That's all the time that we have for tonight. We hope that you'll like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and send us your comments to feedback@theflipsidetv.com. That is feedback@theflipsidetv.com. Most importantly, we hope you'll join us again next week for another episode of The Flip Side.